Have you ever witnessed a person so shrouded in wealth and isolation that they seem more like a museum exhibit than a human being? Where everyone around them moves in a hushed, fearful ballet of perfect service, but never once makes real contact. That was Alara Vance. And what happened the day someone finally dared to touch her? Well, it didn't just change her life. It revealed a truth about kindness that will leave you breathless. Stick with me to the very end, because this story redefines what it means to truly see someone. If you believe in the power of human connection, hit that like button right now. It helps us share more true kindness tales like this one. Alara Vance wasn't a person, she was an asset. The sole heiress to the Vance International Empire, she lived in the penthouse suite of her father's skyscraper, a crystal fortress hovering above the city. Her world was one of silent, seamless luxury. Bodyguards in tailored suits formed a moving perimeter around her, not just from threats, but from life itself. At 22, she had never carried cash, never hailed a cab, never felt the jostle of a crowd. Her tutors, chefs, and stylists were the best in the world, but they addressed her as Miss Vance, with bowed heads and vacant eyes. They polished her existence but never penetrated it. Her father, Julian Vance, a titan of industry with a frosty demeanor, believed love was expressed through impenetrable security and flawless provision. Touch, in his world, was a vulnerability. A risk. So, Alara floated through her days in a beautiful, sensory-deprived vacuum. She was the most photographed untouched person in the city. The press called her the Ice Princess, but the frost was not of her making, it was the chilling effect of absolute, suffocating control. Her only interactions were transactional, her only warmth came from the heated marble floors. This changed, nominally, when Julian Vance decided even an asset needed some public polish. He enrolled her, with a hefty endowment and a swarm of discreet security, in a prestigious but small arts college. She was to study literature, a suitably refined pursuit. Her arrival on campus was like a royal visit gone covert. Professors were pre-briefed, students were subtly warned, and a private study was reserved for her use alone. In class, a bodyguard sat at the back. An empty circle of seats always surrounded her. She was a ghost in plain sight, a masterpiece behind velvet rope. Whispers followed her. Don't stare. Don't approach. Her father will ruin you. The message was clear. Look, but do not touch. Acknowledge, but do not engage. Alara's essays were brilliant, her analysis keen, but she never raised her hand. Her voice, unused to casual conversation, seemed to startle even her when she was forced to use it. She was drowning in a sea of her own irrelevance, a jewel sinking under the weight of its setting. Then, in her Modern Ethical Dilemmas seminar, she saw him. He was late, bursting through the door with an apology that was harried but genuine, a canvas backpack slung over one worn corduroy jacket. He carried the faint, honest scent of coffee and laundry soap. This was Leo, the new adjunct professor, a man whose life was etched in the gentle lines around his eyes and the slight, permanent tiredness in his smile. He was a former human rights journalist, now teaching to have more stable hours for his 7-year-old daughter, Maya. He knew nothing of Miss Vance's protocols. He saw only a young woman sitting alone, her posture not one of arrogance, but of profound withdrawal. On his first day, he did the unthinkable. He broke the circle. It happened after a discussion on societal isolation. Leo, passionate and pacing, asked Alara directly for her thoughts. A collective inhale sucked the air from the room. The bodyguard at the back shifted, a subtle warning. Alara froze, her words locking in her throat. The silence stretched, agonizing. The other students looked away, embarrassed for her, or for themselves. Leo didn't. He waited, his gaze patient and open. When she finally stuttered a fragmented, academic response, he nodded thoughtfully. A good point, he said, but it sounds like you're quoting a textbook. What do you feel? What's your dilemma? The question was so alien, so personal, it was as if he'd spoken in another language. Nobody asked Alara Vance what she felt. They asked what she required. At the end of class, as students filed out, giving her birth, Leo gathered his papers. Alara, moving on autopilot toward the door guarded by her silent sentinel, dropped a sleek, expensive pen. Leo bent, picked it up, and walked toward her to return it. Instinctively, he held it out. And instinctively, when she went to take it, their fingers brushed. It was less than a second. A millisecond of skin-on-skin contact. But it was electric. For Alara, it was the first unsanctioned, non-medical, non-stylistic human touch she could remember since her mother's embrace, a memory so faint it was a phantom. Her hand jerked back as if burned, her eyes wide with shock. The bodyguard was there in an instant, a wall of suit and muscle, his hand on Leo's chest. "Step back, sir. Do not touch her." Leo, bewildered, held up his hands, the pen now a damning piece of evidence. "I was just returning her pen." The incident was reported. Julian Vance was incandescent. A lawsuit was drafted. Leo was to be fired, his reputation shattered. The college administration, terrified of Vance's wrath, summoned Leo. But Leo, holding the notice, thought not of his career, but of the look in Alara's eyes in that moment of contact. It wasn't disgust. It was fear, yes, but underneath, a staggering, profound hunger. He thought of his daughter, Maya, and what it would do to her soul to never be hugged, high-fived, or comforted with a touch. He made a decision. Instead of pleading for his job, he asked for a meeting with Julian Vance. To everyone's astonishment, intrigued by the audacity, Vance agreed. In the stark, imposing office at the top of the world, Leo faced the billionaire. He didn't speak of defamation or wrongful dismissal. He spoke of a girl. "You've built her a fortress, sir," Leo said, his voice steady but fervent. "But a fortress is also a prison. You've protected her from everything, including what makes life worth living. That touch you're trying to sue over. It wasn't an assault. It was the first time, in maybe decades, anyone treated her like a normal human being. She's starving, Mr. Vance. And you're prosecuting someone for offering a crumb of bread." Julian Vance, a man who commanded boards with a glance, was silenced. Leo's words weren't accusations, they were a mirror, and for the first time, Vance saw the haunting reflection of his daughter's loneliness. The lawsuit vanished. Leo kept his job, but more astonishingly, Vance issued a new, unprecedented directive to Alara's security team. Professor Carter was to be granted unmonitored access for academic mentorship. It was a crack in the dam. Leo, guided by his paternal heart, began his lessons outside the classroom. He didn't lecture. He brought her to the college's community garden, asking her to hold soil for a seedling. "It won't grow if you're afraid of it," he said simply. He invited her to his modest, chaotic apartment for a study session, where Maya, a whirlwind of paint and chatter, immediately glued herself to Alara's side. Maya, with the unerring instinct of a child, saw no billionaire's daughter. She saw a sad, quiet lady who needed a friend. She climbed into Alara's lap to show her a drawing, linking her small, sticky hand with Alara's. Alara wept. It was the second touch, and this time, she didn't flinch. She held on as if to life itself. Leo taught her how to make terrible pancakes. He argued with her about books, not as a pupil, but as an equal. He gave her chores: dry the dishes, fold Maya's tiny shirts. Normal, mundane, healing touchstones of belonging. The change was seismic. Alara's voice found its strength. She started speaking in class, her ideas vibrant in her own. She smiled, a real one that reached her eyes. Julian Vance, watching from a distance via reports that now spoke of laughter and paint stains, felt the ice around his own heart begin to thaw. The story's climax came at the college's winter festival. Alara, for the first time, attended a public event without a protective cordon. She was helping Leo at a fundraising booth for a local children's shelter. An aggressive tabloid photographer, seeing his golden chance, shoved through the crowd, his lens invading her space. Old terror flashed across Alara's face. But before any guard could move, Leo stepped in front of her, a firm, protective hand on her shoulder. "That's enough," he said, his voice calm but unyielding. The photographer sneered, "And who are you?" Her new bodyguard. Alara, from behind Leo, felt the steadying pressure of his hand. That touch wasn't offense. It was an anchor. She drew a breath, stepped forward, and linked her arm through Leo's. She looked directly at the camera, her posture no longer that of a prisoner, but of a person. "No," she said, her voice clear and carrying. "He's my friend." In that moment, the Ice Princess myth shattered forever. The photo that made the papers wasn't of an isolated heiress, it was of a young woman, standing shoulder to shoulder with a single dad and his beaming daughter, connected, protected, and finally, truly alive. Julian Vance, seeing that photo, didn't see a breach in security. He saw his daughter, home at last. He quietly became the primary donor to Leo's children's shelter project. Alara now runs its literacy program. And every Sunday, without fail, she has dinner in a warm, messy apartment, where the greatest wealth is measured in laughter, shared stories, and the freedom to reach out and hold the hand of someone you love. This, my friends, is why we tell these stories. Because one moment of courage, one act of seeing a person instead of a persona, can melt the thickest ice. Leo, the single dad with nothing to give but his empathy, touched a life and changed an entire world. If this story touched your heart, do two things for me. Subscribe to True Kindness Tales for more real-life stories that prove compassion as the most powerful force on earth. And hit that like button. It tells the algorithm that the world needs more kindness, and helps us find and share the next incredible story. Remember, you never know how a simple, human touch can change everything.